You know, I heard there's some monoliths in the area. You want to go practice some night shooting?
Yeah, sure. Let me check something real quick. Let me go get some equipment. How much for each?
5,600.
Here, and in today's video we're going to be going over the practical use of weapon-mounted digital night vision optics. As usual, these videos do take a lot of time and effort to make, and nothing helps us more than sticking around until the end of the video. Unlike other YouTubers who want likes and comments, I just want your watch time. So today, to drive our discussion, we're using the new optic offered by DNT called the C200. However, this C200 won't give your eyes GIOS to control people, and instead it just gives you the ability to see in the dark. I will also be asking the opinion of my friend Tactical Donut, who is a former Navy SEALs operator who personally took down Osama bin Laden himself. Jokes aside, he is former military and has some good knowledge around night vision, so I'll be getting his opinion on the optic as well.
We've also consulted with some of our military friends who've had real-world experience using weapon-mounted night vision devices, like the analog PVS-30. Since Flandre has more knowledge in this area, I'll have her lead the discussion comparing how the military uses analog weapon-mounted night vision devices to the features and functions commercial-grade digital weapon-mounted night vision optics provide, and then we will go into the civilian use cases for them.
So to get started, we do need to touch on some basic night vision principles and fundamentals. We won't be getting too technical here, as there are other channels that are much better suited for such topics on night vision, but to get an understanding of how you could use weapon-mounted digital night vision in a tactical setting, we do need to lay out the basics. Night vision, when combined with proper training, is generally seen as a massive force multiplier in tactical combat contexts, as it allows the operator a distinct advantage in low-light environments. But emphasis on proper training, as it can become a liability in settings where elements like fog of war, weather conditions, limited field of view, tunnel vision, and over-reliance can cause issues in a squad setting. The current standard for night vision devices are helmet-mounted analog tubes like the PVS-14, and in practice, one would either use them as a monocular, which is cheaper and lighter weight, but at the cost of limited depth perception, or dual tubes, which will give you much better depth perception, but at the cost of added weight, which will require additional counterweights and added neck strain. However, both setups will still have a limited field of view, typically around 40 degrees. In comparison, the human eye has a field of view around 200, and limiting your natural field of view can lead to tunnel vision if the operator is not aware of these limitations and not trained properly to scan their environment. As such, scanning discipline is one of the core fundamentals of night vision use. One of the main advantages analog night vision provides is having no latency. The image you see through the tubes uses an intensifier unit that magnifies the ambient light in your environment, and as a result, what you see has the same qualities of what you would see in the real world if you were using a scope or binoculars during the day. However, it is costly, and many do turn to digital night vision as a result, as it is a much cheaper alternative to analog.
Hi everyone, Flandre here. For this next segment, I wanted to talk about weapon-mounted night vision as used in duty, as it is a much more specialized application. In duty use, the standard for weapon-mounted night vision are analog image-intensified clip-on night sight devices, or CNVD for short. These devices are usually used by support elements in a squad, like a designated marksman or a sniper who is positioned further away from the main elements. In these situations, weapon-mounted night vision makes sense as navigation doesn't matter in these situations. The common devices you will see in military use include analog units like the AN PVS-27, PVS-30, or the L3 Harris CNVD LR that are mounted forward of an LPVO. However, in more recent times, it has become more popular to use thermal imaging devices, but that is an entirely different discussion that could be its own video. So to summarize, weapon-mounted night vision isn't something you use for navigation, but rather it is more suited for longer distance shooting in low light.
For this next segment, I will go over the features and limitations of the C200, and my opinion of the optic overall, and then we will get into the more practical use of the weapon-mounted digital night vision. This particular model is advertised as a 4-in-1 tactical optic, but I want to know how many of those features are actually usable in a tactical real-world setting, as the company is trying to pack this thing with just about every feature imaginable. First off, the C200 has a built-in reticle, and can be used as an optic all on its own. It can be used 100% as a standalone unit, and I found that running it as a standalone unit was the most practical way to use the optic, as the C200 also boasts of being able to be used as a magnifier. Although I do have some questions around the practical application of this, especially for night shooting, as you would need an optic with a night vision mode to get dim enough to use in combination with the DNT. The C200 does require you to use a focus ring to bring the area you are shooting at into focus, but if being used as a magnifier, the secondary optic you are using does go out of focus. Due to this, it does feel like the C200 is better suited as a standalone optic, especially since it has a built-in reticle that you can use.
Fuck me, I'm good.
But you might disagree, and may have a practical use for it as a magnifier. And that gets us to the next point around this optic, and that is the ability to film using the optic itself. Being able to film everything during a shooting session, and then reviewing it after was fantastic. And I see many use cases for this, especially on the front of content creation. I certainly will be using this a whole lot more as an additional tool for content creation. However, the main feature of the C200 is the fact that it is a night vision capable optic, and it does this fairly well when combined with an IR illuminator. I found it easy to see at night, and you do have the option of switching between different filters. Standard black and white, a filter to emulate green phosphor, and a filter to emulate white phosphor. However, you certainly do need to use an IR illuminator, especially when there is little to no ambient light. Under a full moon, it was certainly doable to use without IR, but it was still difficult to make out, especially when you moved. However, on a night with no moon or very low moonlight available, we found it was pretty much impossible to use the optic as well, even when there was a light turned on in the back. In these scenarios, the use of an IR was absolutely necessary. Compared to other weapon-mounted night vision, the DNT does have a fairly wide field of view, at 27 degrees. You may think that this is fairly shallow, especially considering the 40 degrees that a PVS-14 has, and you'd be correct. But in general, many weapon-mounted optics have a fairly narrow and more zoomed-in field of view. For example, the Holosun DRS NV has a field of view at only 7 degrees, which is significantly more narrow. For practical use, I want to split this into two categories: duty use and recreational or training use.
As for duty use, weapon-mounted digital night vision has some pretty significant drawbacks, mainly inherent to the digital night vision devices in general. Primarily, these devices need IR illumination to be useful. And when being used against opponents who also have night vision capable devices, they will see your IR lights flooding into the surrounding area, which will give away your position. Second off, there is an issue with refresh rate and lag. It's not a huge deal if you're blinking away at targets, but if you are shooting at anything of consequence, those two factors are something you need to seriously consider, as latency on dynamic moving targets can result in a difference between a hit or a miss, as it can be inches in difference between what you see and what you're actually aiming at. When using the optic at night under a full moon with no IR, this is also very apparent. And another reason why digital night vision simply needs IR illumination to be useful, even under ideal lighting conditions. Finally, many of these added feature sets aren't really all that practical. If I needed a daytime magnifier, throwing on a glass magnifier behind my optic is the better choice. It won't run out of battery, and you will have a much cleaner view, as the magnification on digital devices is going to be a digital zoom most of the time, like the C200, which is limited by the resolution of the sensor. The clip-on functionality is also a weird one, because it is really only going to be useful when used in combination with an LPVO, and because the C200 uses a digital screen, you are basically just using your scope to zoom into pixels, which ends up looking, well, pixelated. For these reasons, like Mugi said earlier in the video, I do think the C200 is best used as a standalone unit, and like we discussed previously about how weapon-mounted night vision is used in practice, I think the C200 would struggle in an application where the operator needed to rely on it in a DMR support role. And of course, you'll need an appropriate illuminator that will be able to light up the area you need to reach, as you will need IR to see anything at all. That being said, being able to see in the dark is still better than not being able to see in the dark. And certainly, having any device that will aid you in the dark will put you at an advantage over anyone who is lacking night vision. I mean, so many firearms that people buy these days anyway aren't really meant for duty use. A lot of people just want to have fun and go plinking with their friends, and that's honestly fine. And I feel like digital weapon-mounted night vision pretty much fits into that kind of role.
With all that said, digital night vision is great for people who just want to use it recreationally, or for people who want to get their feet wet training under night vision. And let's be honest, that is a use case 99% of you are all doing anyway. Even those who buy into the high-end devices that are used for duty use are mostly just using their gear to LARP, or for recreational use for fun. I myself am an entirely recreational shooter, and my whole channel is just me doing gun stuff for fun. And the DNT C200 was certainly a fun optic to use. When doing target shooting, where the use of an IR illuminator isn't going to get you killed, and shooting with your friends, optics like this are a perfect option. Especially since it can get you on the range and shooting with your buddies at night for 1/10 of the price. And using the C200 as a standalone unit, you save not only weight, but money as well. You can zoom in and use it as an all-in-one LPVO night vision device, record your shooting session with your friends, and just have fun with it.
Also, I think another really great use for it is at milsims or airsoft games. This is a 100% device I would have bought back when I was playing a lot of Milsim West games, especially for the action camera feature. I used to use GoPros and film a lot with games with Oxide, and we would make edits together, and being able to film night shot perspectives out of a device like this would have allowed me to make some really cool edits. Since the field of view is decent, if you're in airsoft or Milsim games, you could also pop it off your gun and use it as a sort of handheld monocular for scanning if you wanted to. Or an action camera if you were just trying to get some footage of your buddies in firefights while you were down for the count.
So I've been using night vision for a while, and unfortunately this thing is not going to replace night vision that you have mounted on your head. It's meant for having on a rifle, so I can see it being very good for hunters. And like Mugi said, you are going to need an IR illuminator because it is a digital night vision. And without bright moonlight on the outside, you're not going to be able to see anything through that optic. But it was very cool to shoot through it. It's a very neat reticle that it has on it, as well as a variable zoom optic. So I think it's a great piece for how cheap it is. In terms of applications, it's mainly going to be primarily for hunters and people shooting on a flat range. The reason I say that is because you have to have an IR illuminator, people that are running night vision are going to see that pretty bright. So I don't think it might work for like if you do milsim games, airsoft.
My mind immediately went to Milsim games, especially with the little recorder.
Yeah, that might be really cool to like get kills on it, shooting people. But I see it primarily going to be for hunters, especially, like I said, the IR illuminator and that recording function, to record that shot that they've taken.
Fun little use case, I actually been using the C200 a whole bunch for astronomy. I'm not very good at astronomy or finding things in the sky, but I'm in a Discord server where there are people who know where things are. I was able to use the C200 to magnify the stars and find the exact pinpoint spot where the M51 galaxy was, and I was able to even take a recording, which allowed the people in the Discord server to tell me whether or not I was pointed in the right direction. And then I was able to use my camera, take a few thousand images, stack them so that I could see the M51 galaxy, which I thought was pretty cool. So just as a disclaimer, DNT did send us this unit, but this video is not sponsored, as you can probably tell from the review. We did tackle this from a more critical perspective. I feel like in recent times, the tactical accessories market has become more and more like the camera market, where companies send units out to YouTubers to review, so that when buyers search for reviews, the search results are saturated by reviews made by YouTubers who got sent units. For this reason, we decided to take a more critical approach to reviews and only review things that we would have bought for ourselves. I feel like we need a Gerald Undone of the gun review world. And with that, I'm renaming Moogie's channel to Moogie Undone.
Excuse me?
Okay, I'm done.
Excuse me? And that was a look at the practical use of weapon-mounted digital night vision systems. I hope you found this video informative. Thank you for watching. Sayonara!
Compared to regular night vision, oh, I fucked that up. Hold on, I lost my train of thought too.
I'm just done for the day.